something that I find very cute in video games? When you play a video game and then you find out that your video game has another video game inside of it! This is so cool, not only because you get more game with your game, but because these bonuses also give you an incentive to try out something completely different or even experience another title you never considered playing before. For this video, I don't want to talk about great game modes or amazing minigames inside of other games. I want to solely focus on video games that have released in the past and you can play them on a completely different video game. Seems simple enough, right? So let's get started! This time, I want to start with a game that gave me the idea for this video. Uncharted 4, A Thief's End. Such a fun game that I was very excited for back in the day, and on top of that, it has an easter egg that I find very cool. There's a chapter in the game in which Nathan and Elena are simply living a normal life back at home. It's a very delightful moment with a fun surprise. In one of their banters, Nathan claims that he can beat Elena's high score in her quote-unquote TB game thing. And that game turns out to be none other than Crash Bandicoot. It's not the full game, of course, you only get to experience one level, but it's a very neat easter egg. The curious part about it is that both Nate and Elena comment on what is going on, as the latter explains to Nathan how to play the game while he continues to make a bunch of silly remarks on it, with dialogue changing depending on your performance. And here's a fun fact. If you manage to beat Elena's high score, you get a trophy, but for some reason, no matter how hard you try, it's impossible to get those final points needed to win. So if you're unaware of this fact, it turns this entire sequence into a very stressful one. It's not until the epilogue where you get to play Crash Bandicoot once again, but this time with one extra crate that gives you just enough points to beat the high score. I don't know if this easter egg was used to foreshadow the insane trilogy that will reveal sometime later, but nonetheless, I find it extremely cute and funny. Donkey Kong 64 also does something similar in which it forces you to play an old game, except that this time you have two. It's pretty awesome, but here's the catch. You need to beat these games no matter what, as they're mandatory to get certain items needed to get to the final boss. The first one is Jetpack, one of the earliest games that Rareware ever developed. A space shooter where you must collect pieces to repair your ship, all while you avoid and shoot enemies. This one isn't very crazy, all you need to do is get 5,000 points to get the Rareware coin. It takes some practice, and thankfully the game is generous with the extra lives, so it shouldn't take you too long to complete this challenge. The next game, on the other hand, is the entire opposite. In Frantic Factory, while using Donkey Kong, you'll find an arcade cabinet that will let you play, well, Donkey Kong Arcade. And just like Jetpack, this is a very fun easter egg. But this time, you have to beat this game twice. The first time you get a... oh, banana. The second time you get the Nintendo coin, which I repeat, is mandatory to get to the final boss, but unlike Jetpack, there's a key difference here. Donkey Kong is unfairly hard, and this is because of one reason. You only get one life. That's it! Beat all 4 levels flawlessly without making any mistakes. Get touched once and you start right from the beginning.
One guy? No continues? Like, seriously, give me a reason why there's no continues.
And remember, you have to do this twice. One for the banana, twice for the coin. But to be fair, you can score yourself an extra life by playing well, but that's the thing. You need to be very good to even get that extra life. So it's up to you if you want to take that risk. It's so damn funny because this cute little easter egg can actually become a roadblock for many. I've actually known of people who never beat Donkey Kong 64 because they couldn't flawlessly beat the arcade version twice. This game is already demanding in its own right, so adding this on top of that feels a bit like insult to injury. You know what's cute? When you play a remake of a game and then said remake gives you the original title it's based on. Metroid Zero Mission is a fantastic remake of Metroid on the NES, and personally, it's one of my favorites in the series. I love its controls, the music, the extra content, more items, all the gameplay upgrades, as well as the quality of life improvements make this remake the definitive version of the story. You have no reason at all to go back to Metroid on the NES. But if you're still curious, the game actually gives you the option to do that, and all you have to do is to beat Zero Mission once, and there you go! Metroid on the NES. It's like, hey, congrats on beating the game, here, play it again but worse. Okay, but jokes aside, I wish more games did something like this. Like Metroid Prime, yeah! If you have a link cable and connect Prime with an already beaten copy of Metroid Fusion, you get two cool bonuses. One of them is playing all of Prime with Samus wearing the Fusion suit, and the other one is, you guessed it, Metroid NES. It's a shame that these features didn't carry over to the remastered edition on the Switch. It would have been very funny to be able to play the exact same game in 3 different ways on the same platform. But if you want to elevate this even more, then look no further than the original Animal Crossing on the Nintendo GameCube. A chill game where you live your virtual life by buying clothes, befriending animals, and collecting bugs, fishes, and a lot of furniture. Some of these pieces of furniture, however, are real NES consoles with real NES games that you can actually play! Yes, we're not talking about demos or just a few levels. You get entire NES games to try out with a whopping selection of more than 15 titles to choose from, including classics such as Pinball, Wario's Woods, Donkey Kong Jr., Balloon Fight, and of course, who can forget? And there's like so much crazy trivia about this. For example, the Japanese version of the game got 2 exclusive titles, those being Mahjong and Gomoku Narabe, while every other country replaced those games with Excitebike and Soccer. But even more curious is that there are 4 titles coded into the game that are next to impossible to get due to their special requirements. Japanese players could gain access to Ice Climber by transferring their data from Dobutsu no Mori to Dobutsu no Mori Plus, while the rest of the world got access to Ice Climber and Mario Brothers, but only if you owned an e-reader and the respective cards needed to get them. I should also note that Mario Brothers straight up had no legal way to be unlocked in Japanese copies. But wait, it gets crazier. Super Mario Bros. Is a game only Japanese players could get, but only a few people in the world got it, as this game was only distributed to 30 winners who participated in a Famitsu magazine sweepstake. That is insane! But can it get worse than that? Yes, it can! The Legend of Zelda, which should be like the coolest game to have in Animal Crossing, is straight up impossible to unlock. There are no legit ways to get it. There was no e-reader card and no distribution event. These 4 games actually have a name within the Animal Crossing community. The Forbidden 4, a very appropriate name if I say so myself. Having NES games in Animal Crossing was an amazing novelty, sure, but the amount of effort and luck you needed to unlock them really makes you appreciate how much easier it is to play these games nowadays, both legally and illegally. But if you think Animal Crossing having 15 NES games was impressive, man, you've seen nothing! When I was looking for information for this video, a friend of mine left a comment that said, Sega should be banned from this discussion, it's like their biggest gimmick. And honestly, he was not wrong, even Sonic has done it a few times. And I'm not talking about his collections, I'm talking about Sonic Adventure DX, which allows players to unlock a bunch of Game Gear titles the more emblems you get. How many games are we talking about? Well, what about 12 titles in total? That's the entire gallery of Sonic Game Gear. You have Sonic 1 and 2, the Sonic Drift Duology, Dr. Robotnik's Mean Bean Machine, Tails Sky Patrol, Tails Adventure, and many more. A pretty awesome reward, all things considered. Sonic Generations did something similar in which you could buy the original Sonic the Hedgehog on the store and even acquire an upgrade that gave you infinite lives on it. Sure, it's not as impressive as an entire Game Gear gallery, and it's just Sonic 1, but it's there, I guess. But if you wanna go above and beyond, then look no further than Yakuza / Like a Dragon / Judgment games. This series is no stranger to having a plethora of minigames, going as far as including actual Club Sega arcades to play games. In the past, you would only get original minigames that, while fun, were nothing remarkable. But it wasn't until Yakuza 5 when they started to include the actual real-life arcade titles, from Virtua Fighter 2 to Taiko no Tatsujin. In Yakuza 0, since the story takes place in 1988, it only features games from the 80s, like Space Harrier, Fantasy Zone, and Outrun. Other games like to mix it up by including old and even more modern arcade titles. You have Puyo Puyo in Yakuza 6, Spike Out and Sega Bass Fishing in Infinite Wealth, Lost Judgment has Sonic the Fighters, and this one is special to me because I played this and beat it for the first time during a stream, and I've never had my viewers so hyped up like that before. It's like, I will boot up fighting Vipers and the audience will go but as soon as I put on Sonic the Fighters, it turned into absolute madness. The first Judgment game has an arcade title named Gamut of the Dead. This one is an original minigame actually, but I wanted to mention it because it's a clear homage to both House of the Dead and Yakuza Dead Souls. They even recycled the monster designs from the latter. That is so cool! Oh, and you wanna know something really funny? Some games feature Virtua Fighter 5 in the arcade. Well, Virtua Fighter 5 is a game that has never seen a PC release before. That is, unless you put a game that has it on the arcade, and there you go! All of Virtua Fighter 5 on PC. And you think it stops there? Hell no! Both Lost Judgment, the greatest game ever created, and The Man Who Raised His Name feature a real Sega Master System, and you can unlock or buy cartridges in different stores and activities to play them. You have Alex Kidd in Miracle World, Penguin Land, Fantasy Zone 2, Galaxy Zone, and so many more. Oh yeah, and depending on the Yakuza title, beating these games or getting a certain score in them is mandatory for 100% completion. So, are you a true Sega maniac? Then look no further than the Yakuza / Like a Dragon / Judgment games. They'll do more than enough to satisfy you, and they'll give you many more games than the PlayStation 5 ever could. However, this trend didn't start with Yakuza, as the Shenmue series, which is considered by many to be a precursor to Yakuza, also features the same concept. Real-life arcade games that you can play in the game's arcade parlor, with Space Harrier and Outrun. There's also this game called QTE Title, which is based on an actual arcade machine that Sega made called Big Title. And here's some fun trivia. Since Shenmue 3 was not developed by Sega, the game features a parody game called Chobu-chan Fighter, in which all Virtua Fighter characters are reskinned to look like this cute dog mascot called Chobu-chan. Being able to play older games inside of games will always be a treat. However, there are times in which this isn't as good as it seems. One interesting example that was brought to my attention is Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 3 Mutant Mayhem. A game where after you beat the first chapter, you can unlock the arcade version of Turtles in Time, which, hey, I'm not the biggest TMT fan out there, but even I know how much people really love this game. Sadly, this port is far from perfect, as it includes re-recorded voices, a brand new soundtrack that is not as good as the original, and a worse frame rate. Needless to say, it's an inferior version of Turtles in Time. It's a neat little bonus you can get, but not as good as it could have been. You know what makes this phenomenon even more exciting? When a game, instead of the game, marks the very first time it gets released into a new market. Here we have Metal Gear and Metal Gear 2 Solid Snake. Games originally released for the Japan-only MSX2 home computer. Since this system was never released outside of its home country, these games also didn't reach the West. Instead, we got something different. I know some of you know this story already, but for those who don't, Metal Gear actually traveled overseas in the late 80s, but not the MSX version, but rather a completely changed game for the NES. Obviously, due to the inferior hardware and Konami's orders, the game changed so drastically that it became a different product altogether, with an altered level design, changed music, boss battles being different, and hell, you never fight the titular Metal Gear at any point. Still, even with these changes, Metal Gear on the NES sold pretty well actually, over 1 million copies just in North America. This eventually led to the creation of a direct sequel of that version named Snake's Revenge, which was done without the consent or knowledge of Hideo Kojima. And in response, he went on to create the sequel to his own Metal Gear on the MSX, aptly named Metal Gear 2 Solid Snake, not to be confused with Metal Gear Solid. For more than 10 years, it was impossible for non-Japanese fans to play these games. That is, unless you got yourself a copy of Metal Gear Solid 3 Subsistence, a director's cut of Snake Eater. If you buy this, not only did you get one of the most incredible video games ever created, but you gain full access to both Metal Gear and Metal Gear 2 Solid Snake for the MSX, localized for the first time ever in foreign markets. Fully translated to English, keeping the gameplay intact while also adding a bunch of extra enhancements to their original releases. And you know what the funniest part is? This isn't the only time Konami has pulled something like that. Castlevania Round of Blood goes through a similar story. A Konami game that used to be exclusive to Japan, When they wanted to take it overseas, they did it by porting it to the SNES. But in consequence, they had to change so many things that it ended up becoming a completely different product under the name of Castlevania Dracula X, often considered by many to be an inferior version of the Richter vs. Dracula story. However, in 2008, Round of Blood got a remake on the PSP called Castlevania The Dracula X Chronicles. And by doing certain things, you can unlock a plethora of amazing things, one of them being the original Round of Blood fully translated to English, once again marking the first time ever the game released outside of Japan. And if I may show my opinion quickly, this is one of the greatest Castlevania games ever created. God, I love it so much. And not just that, you also get this party game of Round of Blood that you could get on the PC Engine if you use the Gronk system card. And you also get the fully playable version of Castlevania Symphony of the Night. The most curious part about this is that they relocalized the entire thing, adding more items that weren't present in the PlayStation 1. Maria Renard became playable but with a different moveset from her Sega Saturn incarnation. The dialogue was changed to resemble more the Japanese script, and all the characters got new voice actors. Whether the last 2 points are good or bad, I'll let you decide. But if you ask me though, it can be a mixed bag. Yuri Lowenthal as Alucard is not as iconic as Robert Belgrave. And of course, by playing this version, you miss an iconic line such as
"What is a man? A miserable little pile of secrets."
Still, the fact that you get all of Symphony of the Night, Round of Blood, and a remake all in one package makes this a hell of a deal. Remember when Konami used to be cool? I do. And I'm so sad now. Alright, I know I said at the beginning I wasn't looking for minigames instead of games, but I think this one deserves a mention, and you'll see why. The Witcher 3 contains a minigame that every single person adores, and if you say you don't, you're lying. Gwent. It's a card game where players control an army, each with their own unique combat style and strategies. What makes Gwent so fun is how easy it is to understand and how fast each match can be. Despite its simplicity, there's a lot of depth and tons of fun combos to strengthen yourself or weaken your opponent. The entire match can change with just one card, and that makes it so exciting to play, and I'm serious. I've actually seen people say they enjoy Gwent more than The Witcher 3, and well, I guess even CD Projekt Red felt that way too, cause sometime later they released Gwent, the Witcher card game. A standalone title that completely overhauls the card game scene in The Witcher 3, featuring casual and ranked matches, a few expansions, and even had an esports league called Gwent Masters. They were really serious about delivering Gwent to a completely new level. Again, this might not be considered a video game within a video game, but I find it so fascinating how a minigame became so beloved by the community that it evolved into its own thing. Here's another fun one. In Super Smash Bros. Brawl, you can unlock these items called masterpieces. They were nothing more than demos of different Nintendo games. You could play them for a predetermined amount of time and then they will kick you out, just so you could have a small taste of them and maybe buy them on the now defunct Virtual Console. And the one we want to focus on today is The Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time, a demo that only lasts for about 5 minutes. What makes it so special? Well, what if I told you that speedrunners have been able to beat Ocarina of Time in that time limit? Yeah, I'm not kidding you! There's been people who actually managed to get to the credits in less than 5 minutes, sometimes by defeating Ganon, other times by triggering the credit sequence. There's a lot to explain on how this is achieved, and quite frankly, there's a ton of other videos out there who do a much better work than I possibly could at explaining this. So please, check them out if you're curious. I just wanted to mention it because who in their right mind looks at demos inside of other video games and says, yeah, I can make a new record out of this. Speedrunners, man, I love them so much. Alright, to finish off this video, I'm gonna bend the rules a little bit once again. It's technically a game hidden within a console, but I really wanted to talk about this. In early versions of the Nintendo Switch, if you were to set the date of the console to July 11 and did certain hand gestures in a specific way, then you will unlock the game Gold for the NES. Now I want to ask you, what's the meaning of this date? What's the meaning of these gestures? July 11 was the day that Nintendo's former president Satoru Iwata passed away, and the hand gestures are a reference to an iconic phrase he will say in most Nintendo Directs.
Directly to you.
When you also consider the fact that Iwata was the sole programmer of Golf, it all makes sense now. This is a tribute to Nintendo's late president, but it goes even deeper than that. This Easter egg is also considered by many to be an omamori. Omamoris are amulets said to bring good luck and protection in some cultures. Normally, they are not supposed to be opened in order to keep them from losing their blessings, similar way that golf was not supposed to be found by people. So not only is this Easter egg a tribute to Iwata, but it was also a good luck charm to help the Nintendo Switch. And hey, regardless of what you think of this console, I think it worked. It was one of Iwata's last projects before he passed, and it ended up becoming a commercial success. It's as if he blessed it in some way. Nowadays, the Easter egg is next to impossible to get since it was removed during the 4.0 firmware update. But nonetheless, this was an amazing gesture. Satoru Iwata was a wonderful man, and this Easter egg is a reminder of that.
Now, it's your turn to tell me, what are your favorite examples of games within games? Did you like them? Did they push you to try something completely new? Please let me know in the comments, and while you're at it, thank you so much for your time, I really hope you enjoyed the video, and if you want to support the channel, actually I would really appreciate that, you can do so by liking, sharing, commenting, subscribing, or Patreon. Anything will help me so much, and it will mean so much to me. Have a wonderful day, and take care! I'll see you next time!